Hello there and welcome to Friday Arvo Chats. Hope you've been having a great week and that the Monday morning bliss bombs set you up for a really fantastic week, and that now that we're getting to the end of the week, you've got time to have some afternoon tea and join me for a chat. So today I want to get serious and talk about stuff that has a lot of meaning for everybody. Even though it's something that we all, I think, generally acknowledge, it's something that most of us don't actually do anything about. We don't address it until we actually hit the wall and collapse in a heap. So today I'm talking about stress and burnout with a particular focus on burnout. I'm Linda MC from Lovelali. I'm an embodiment coach and spiritual healer. I help women managing small teams in their own business or somebody else's who are stressed, burned out, and overwhelmed to feel calm and clear, resilient, and responsive. So today I'm talking about burnout. And when we talk about this topic, you could be forgiven that it applies to, when you've got this short-term, intense goal that you're aiming for that requires that you put the nose to the grindstone and really push through long hours, tight time frames. You get the picture. You're just really going for it to meet this particular deadline or goal. And, you're literally burning the candle at both ends to achieve the thing it is that you want to achieve. And yes, that is burnout. And, if that was all that was going on for us, you'd think, well, at the end of that big effort, I will just stop, take a break, rest and recharge, and I'm all set to head back into it. In actual fact, burnout is something that's a little more insidious, a lot more chronic, and becomes quite relentless. In fact, it's an accumulation of factors that impact on your health and well-being over time. And the longer it draws out, the more unrelenting it becomes. In fact, in a recent report released by OC Tanner, they've identified that 79% of employees, this is around the world, suffer from burnout, whether that's mild, moderate, or severe. 79% of people in the workforce, whether they're working in a business of their own or for somebody else, or in one of our large corporates or institutions, 79% of the world is suffering from burnout. Makes you stop and think, doesn't it? In fact, it's become so prevalent that the World Health Organization has categorized burnout as a syndrome relating to chronic workplace stress that's not well managed. They've actually recognized burnout as a syndrome, a standalone condition that needs addressing. So, what does that actually mean for you? Today, I'm going to talk to the lovely Adair Palmer. Some of you who are familiar with my page and my work will have met Adair before. She is the proud owner of social media with Adair and Theone, and her current role in life is to help people like me, solopreneurs, business owners, not-for-profit organisations, to get really savvy and smart with their social media strategies and the promotional work that they do in the social field. So I'm bringing Adair on today to talk to us because she actually had a life before this particular life, and she experienced this syndrome that we're talking about, burnout. So let's just click the magic button, bring Adair onto the screen, and we'll have a chat with Adair. And hi Adair, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon and for being so courageous in sharing your experience with burnout and how that has literally changed your life for the better. I might add.
It is an absolute pleasure to be here as a guest on your show. I was so excited when you said that you were doing the Friday Arvo chat, and I'm more than happy to share my experience, because if it helps just one person to salvage their lives before it goes completely down the toilet, then, we would have achieved something. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. So just to clarify this a bit more, when we talk about burnout and the general application of workplace stress, when you look up what the World Health Organization has actually defined this as. They include elements such as workplace culture, the feeling of lack of achievement, and long hours, that people just feel unacknowledged in their role. So can you relate to us a little bit about what happened for you in that kind of scenario?
Yeah, well, I was working in a corporate job. It was actually in government, but corporate government, and in a fairly high level position. And it was a very, very masculine environment. So there was a lot of testosterone there. In masculine, I mean, like I would have said, like male dominated environment. But after working with you, I know that, there's the masculine, the feminine energy, and it was definitely a lot of masculine energy. And it was, I think, for people who had the creative streak and wanted to do things a little bit differently, because where I worked, we needed to have a blueprint for everything. We needed to have there was the culture of the place. It was and some people loved it, but for me it was absolutely toxic, and it was something that I felt like I was actually in a box suffocating. So it's it was something that I didn't actually realize it was happening to me either, which is really interesting, because the value of having hindsight, when they say 20/20 vision.
So because you it's kind of like, the frog in the pot of water that's put on the stove to boil. It doesn't actually realize until the water's boiling how much danger it's in, exactly what's going on. So can you recall some of the things that you were experiencing that drained your energy, or that, some of the things that you noticed, your symptoms perhaps of what you experienced?
The symptoms, I guess, were like, I felt like each day I was walking through quicksand. Actually, not even quicksand. It felt like I was wading thigh deep through sewage. It really just, and I look back now, a lot like now with the flow and the energy that's in my life now, and that was the norm. The norm was to drag yourself out of bed and, just to actually get to the bus stop. I just remembered it felt like the world was pushing against me. It was and it was a huge effort. And that was what I thought that was normal. I thought that to work at that level in that environment, that came with the territory, and that's what you had to do. And
so,
go on.
I was just going to say, so you're suggesting that as your level of responsibility increased, it felt harder and harder for you to actually turn up at work, and that was just part and parcel of the position you were in?
Well, not necessarily. It was more the environment around me, because I'd always had, I'd been in reasonably high-level positions. My position changed, and they had a government that came in and said, right, we're doing targeted voluntary separation packages, and there were people falling over themselves to either shore up a what do they call it? When you get your package, redundancy,
yeah,
or save their jobs because they hadn't been around long enough to get a redundancy. And I'm sort of sitting there going, I don't know, it's like I thought for me it was like the security of being in a government position that was tenured, that was going to see me through to retirement. And then I'd buy a caravan and tootle off around Australia. Life had different plans, didn't it?
Funny how many people have a very similar golden dream that they're aiming for, like putting ourselves in these particular boxes. So I'm just checking. I can't see any questions or comments coming through, so we'll just keep plodding along with ourselves. So, I mean, you're relaying there that the experience was it was almost more like an emotional kind of pushing yourself in to make yourself go and do this. Hey there, we have the beautiful
Leslie. Hello, Leslie.
Oops.
Lovely day. It's beautiful. We've got 3 states here. We have 3 states. I was going to say Northern Territory, Queensland, South Australia, but it could be the state of disarray, the state of whatever. Yeah. So, hi, Leslie.
Hi, Leslie. Thank you so much for tuning in. I just wanted to ask you, Adair, apart from this sense of really having to walk through sewerage, and that's a really vivid description, what are some of the other things that you noticed? Was it a level of fatigue that was making you feel like this?
Oh, always tired. No energy and no inspiration to do anything. In fact, I'd come home at night time and fall into a bottle of wine because that was my coping mechanism. And that actually added to the problem. I thought it was making it go away, and it might have on a small, like for a nanosecond, but then in the morning you'd wake up and the tiredness was brought on from too much drinking, but also the emotional just exhaustion that was, the combination of those together. It was, it was exhausting.
Yeah, it's interesting. And we've been joined by Heather Louise, who is sitting in a hospital bed. I hope that everything is going okay for you there, Heather Louise. Thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah. We are talking about burnout today. So if you have any questions or stories that you'd like to contribute, we'd be more than happy to hear it. So Adair, you touch on a really interesting point there. It seems that alcohol is often the go-to to manage stress and burnout, and that actually does contribute. And even though 1 glass of wine per day, with obviously some alcohol-free days, because I used to work for the Alcohol and Other Drugs program, so I remember some of their stuff. But, 1 standard drink a day is actually okay, and wine actually does have some health benefits to them. But if you go beyond that limit and actually start using, the alcohol for desensitizing and numbing, then you start walking into some of the health impacts that alcohol itself brings. So you're getting a double whammy. So, it's interesting that that's often the first choice for people who are feeling very stressed is, I've worked really hard, I deserve a cold beer or I deserve a glass of wine. It's like, I've earned this. And it's going to help me relax, and then I'll get dinner ready. Yeah, so it's quite a common go-to. So what are some of the other things that you noticed? Like it's kind of hard to pick that slippery slope where it starts, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because I spent well over a decade in the same industry, in the same organization, and it was brilliant. It was really great, and it was I would not swap any of that experience for anything. But when they had a change of manager and a change of government, and they had a few things happen that was, and it was like the frog in the pot of water, the boiling water, and I think the thing for me was, it's like a dripping tap. The first few drips, you might feel like a little bit, that doesn't feel, but the radar's not up enough to go, I think that like this stuff could go to hell in a handbasket if I'm not careful, because you don't have the benefit, especially if it's like the first time you go through it. What they say, experience is what you get just after you need it. So, so I would go, invariably I'd actually blame myself if things didn't go right, or if people were prickly, or if I wanted to, I did some pretty, I believe, pretty impressive things that were not valued by people with different agendas. And I took that sort of stuff personally, and now I realize it's actually not even about me, but that's another story for another time, I guess. But yeah. I think it's trying to be tapping into who you are. And at the time, I think I probably was, the first thing would be, am I having that next glass of wine because the first one isn't doing the job, or am I having the third glass of wine, or am I having the fourth glass of wine? That should have been a trigger, but completely oblivious to that, because I was so fixated on that secure government job that was giving me an extremely high income for a woman in government at that time. But I think the trigger points would have been really about your habits. Look at how many sick days you're having. For me, would have been a result of I get up and I go, mental health day, and I would I had no qualms in just going, I'm just going to have a mental health day, and I would do that on a reasonably regular basis and not even feel bad about it. But it was invariably because I may have drunk a little bit too much the night before, or I just couldn't face whatever was coming up. So it was like saying, like, if you mapped that, then you would go, okay.
Yeah. And it's interesting that we coined the phrase mental health day. I just need a mental health day. I mean, even just thinking that and putting those two concepts together are actually real alarm bells. And, it's a term that has been adopted in our culture, and it's acceptable. We all need a mental health day every now and then. But what's actually happening is our state of mental health is actually being affected. And in fact, Beyond Blue has stats on their website at the moment that show that 1 in 6 Australian women at some point in their life will suffer from depression. 1 in 6. 1 in 3 Australian women at some point in their life will experience anxiety. Now, these are things that actually come into that whole syndrome of burnout, particularly the depression side of things. I certainly know from my own experience of going through burnout and overwhelm in my role in corporate, that mood swings, anxiety was certainly a part of the picture for me. Is that something that you experienced as well?
Oh, yes. And that was something that when it hit, because I'm generally a happy person, and depression isn't something that's, it's not something that's sort of a big factor at all, hasn't been in my past, until that point. And I actually felt, you're talking about anxiety and depression, well, there were two things there. And Sharon's here. How are you doing, Sharon?
Hey, Sharon.
Two things that really, really impacted me. And I think it was probably the start of what I really needed to look at, what was happening in my life. And the first one was the doctor actually put me on antidepressants, because I'd been to the doctor for other associated illnesses. And I know that year I said my medical bill that I was paying and different treatments and whatever was well over $1,000. And I'd been to the doctor on average, every 2 or 3 times a month. Now, for me, it'd be that many times a year or in 2 years, because, I'm so goddamn healthy. But back then, the first thing that they did, the first thing the doctor did was, said, do you have suicidal thoughts? And I went, well, actually, yes. I know that, if I'm in the car, especially if I was in the work car, I think of slamming into a tree. It's not laughing matter, but that was seriously what I was. And in my mind, it was like normal thoughts. It was what, like I didn't even question why I was thinking like that. And when so the doctor put me on these antidepressants, instead of exploring why, deeper reasons why, I might have been even thinking that, but the anxiety that was associated with that was horrific. It was so bad that I would go into I would actually order my food online, because I became to a point where I wouldn't even go into shopping centres. And it was really tough to actually get myself into work and back at its worst. And there was one day when it really came to a head, and I was getting my nails done, and I was sitting in this salon, and I just felt this anxiety panic attack come over me, and it actually was so bad I passed out. And it was and what made it even worse was the poor girl that was doing my nails. All she could think of was, get the hell out of my shop. I don't want this weirdo passing out and making a mess all over the floor. But so, and it was I actually passed out, and then it was like, this is not normal. And when I was on the antidepressants, I was on them for 3 weeks, and I actually was having episodes that were worse than the depression, which, so I ended up taking myself off the antidepressants, and I wouldn't advise that to, if you're on any sort of treatment, do get your doctor's advice. But for me, I just stopped taking them after 3 weeks, and I thought there's got to be other ways, because I was getting sucked into the medical mainstream system, when their job was to keep me where I was, and sort of said, well, I don't know if they even saw it as their job, but it was like, that seems what it's like now. It's like, well, you're here in this job, you're not coping, let's give you some meds to help you cope.
Yeah, exactly. Sharon's actually joining us in a small window between clients. So thank you so much, Sharon. And yeah, absolutely. Depression is sneaky, and it sneaks up on you. And it's not until somebody actually stops you and says, are you actually okay? That you stop and go, no, actually, I'm not. It can be really scary and really isolating. It's a very lonely place sometimes.
You really can. And can I just, interrupt? Can I come upstairs when I'm finished, please? Yes. I have my beautiful family here.
Oh, thank you so much, Adair, for taking time out from them. I really do appreciate you sharing this journey, because
it sounds like a herd of stampeding elephants upstairs. There's a circus happening up there, and it's all unicorns fighting rainbows. Sorry about that. Keep going.
I wanted to maybe, if you can remember and relate, what was going on in the workplace for you as you started shifting into that real slide into depression, and using the alcohol as a coping mechanism. What were some of the things? Was it massive workload? What was it? Can you remember?
The workload wasn't. I always had more things that I wanted to do. And as I started studying, I think I was trying to do too much, and I had always had some really good help around me. There was a couple of things that triggered it, that triggered the slide, and one was one instance that, and I look back, like I said, hindsight's great. There was I was responsible for building what we call the Working in Harmony program. So that was across South Australia for about, at the time, it was around about 18 to 20,000 people that I'd set up for the anti-harassment and bullying policy and procedure, and rolled out the training for that across South Australia for this organisation. And then there was I found myself in the middle of a harassment and bullying claim that I'd submitted the claim, and the system failed me.
Okay.
And that was one point where I had so much faith in this system, and I'd spent years and a lot of heart and soul building this, because I absolutely believed that harassment and bullying in the workplace, it doesn't, like it, I wanted to stamp it out. It just did not belong there. I wanted to have harmonious workplaces. And then when I found out all of the stuff that I'd been doing actually didn't work, because one thing I didn't factor in was you've got people doing stuff, and people make their own minds up about what they want to do, and nothing has got anything to do with what we agreed the policies and procedures would be. And that was soul destroying for me. So that was really, really crushing. And I think that was something that, because I had so much belief in the system and that people would do the right thing, and and I think that's a bit to do with the external environment at that time, which is another point I want to make too, if I think about it. The external environment at the time was like, so much of my well-being was hinging on the external environment. And when they had a change of government, and I had the minister at the time on the phone daily going, you need to do this, you need to do this, and I'm just going like, seriously, you employ me to do my job. This is what I'm good at, I've trained for, and now you want, and I actually felt like a bit of, I keep thinking like flotsam and jetsam on the, on the tide, because I had no control over where I was going, what I was doing, and we could do all the business planning in the world. But when you had someone that was in a position of power that decided what you're going to do on a daily basis, it was a slippery slope, really slippery slope.
Yeah.
But that was all external, and I think that's something, if we do get a chance, I'd like to come back to that.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, we can explore that a little bit further now if you'd like to. I mean, it's what you're describing is really talking about some of those work environmental factors that, there's that feeling of not being in control of the work that you're being asked to do, and that, having to chop and change to meet demands that lie outside of whatever your workplace objectives might actually be. That can be quite difficult to manage, and it does have a massive impact when you feel like you've got absolutely no control, and I am actually really qualified to do this job. Just let me do my job. Yeah, so did you want to unpack that a bit more?
Well, I think the message for me and doing the growth and development that I've done since, and when I left there, it was a pretty dark place, and I was in a very, very, very dark place, and I ended up just walking out and never going back, which was like highly mature. But at that time, I still am, and but not as much as what I used to be as a people pleaser. I wanted to make everybody happy, and I wanted to be liked. And so it is. So that was triggering things in me that were I guess setting off the fears or the anxieties that I hadn't dealt with, that come from my past conditioning and whatever limiting beliefs that I was holding at the time, because that was. It actually felt like every time there was an incident or something, I just took it personally, and I took it was something that it was, I felt I had no control over, and because of that conditioning and because of the situation. So I think I'm off track a little bit, but I think that one of the biggest things is actually the external factors. If we can do the work on ourselves to be resilient and to know our true worth, regardless of what's happening in this external environment around us, then we can survive and thrive in pretty much any environment, or make a healthy, conscious choice to leave, because it's a conscious choice to leave.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, you've really nailed it on the head there. It's that whole being immersed in this sense of overwhelm and burnout and stress really does strip you of that level of maturity, that level of rationality, that ability to be objective and detached and actually view with dispassion what's actually going on around you. You know, you really start to feel like you're your teenage self again and just reacting, you know, where is this monster coming from? And you do seem to take everything personally. There's that real removal of filter between things that are happening around you and the way you actually react to those, because you become reactive. There's no sense of space anymore between your thoughts and your words and your actions and the repercussions. Yeah, it's interesting that you've brought that up. So you obviously experienced a real mismatch of your personal values with what was actually showing up in your workplace for you, as well as that sense of having no real control over the direction that your work was taking.
Yeah.
Is that a fair summary?
That's a very fair summary, yes.
Yeah, and you know, with the benefit of hindsight, that is often the way it eventuates. There's that, you know, we keep coming back to the workplace culture, and often it's a misalignment of our personal values with the organisation's values. And so as a business owner, so let's start talking about some of the positive outcomes for yourself. I mean, you experienced this incredibly intense level of burnout. Not everybody experiences burnout to the same degree. That has you, you know, at a point of having suicidal thoughts, at the point of having, that's it, I can't take it anymore, I'm walking out the door. You know, some people actually notice what's happening a little earlier and are able to do something about that and come to a place of making a rational decision about, is this actually a good fit for me?
Yeah.
If I make the necessary adjustments, can I manage to continue working here? Or do I actually need to do something else? For yourself, your inner child perhaps got you out of that situation and said, no more, this is not for you. Let's get out of here. So what happened for you? Because you've had an incredible turnaround. Burnout's not the end of the world, is it?
Well, and it's not there, no. But I went through the worst year. Would have had to been 2009, I think. So it'd be 10 years ago. And I had, you know, if you don't deal with this stuff, that comes out in the symptoms of from different things. And I had, in that 1 year, I had whooping cough. I had psoriasis. My body was covered in psoriasis, and you know, I spent a lot of time in the treatment, putting steroids on the plaques all over my body, and having tar baths, and that was, and like the light treatment, they put you into this, call it the TARDIS, and I was also diagnosed with asthma as well. And I said to the doctor, "Will I grow out of it?" And she looked at me and she said, "You're going to have to manage it, lovey." So I think the childhood asthma you actually grow out of, but you know, adult, so when you get asthma as an adult, you manage it, you never grow out of it. Well, I've got news for her, and she's wrong. But I could have chosen to believe that. Yeah, you know, got diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and I was. I actually was jogging, and I had this fall, and it's all right because I broke the fall with my face. It was like, so this is all when my relationships were going down the toilet. So it was a pretty bad year. Now I forgot what the original comment was that brought that up, but don't leave it. If you start to see stuff happening, like you start to notice that you're drinking a little bit more, if you start to notice that you're more irritable with your loved ones, or if you start to notice that you're blaming other people for how you feel, or that you are taking sick days when you're not really sick and calling them mental health days, just have a look at what's happening, and you won't, let's hope that nobody gets to that point, because it was a very, very dark place.
Yeah, oh, I'm so glad that you found the way through. I've got a really good question here from Effie. Thanks, Effie. She's saying, does hormonal changes make your thoughts and health spiral downwards? Beautiful question. And
hi, lovely to join us.
Hormonal shifts, I call it a perfect storm. The hormonal shifts that a woman experiences, particularly in the transition through menopause, can be so badly affected by stress. Long-term chronic stress has a major impact on our hormone system. So if you're managing a very stressful situation for a long period of time in your early mothering years, the chances are you're setting yourself up for a really bumpy time through menopause. And so the fluctuations of the hormones themselves, it's like going through adolescence again. The emotions are very reactive. The body is doing things that you can't explain. And if you combine that with an environment in your workplace that is creating a syndrome of burnout anyway, you have the perfect storm.
Well, that's actually, it's interesting that Effie says that, because that was when I started going through menopause, and I actually didn't even realize it at the time, because interestingly enough, that I don't think it wasn't something that was openly discussed. Now, our families are pretty open anyway, but it just wasn't something. It was almost like, it's not something that you put on the table and oh, hi, let's get together for a cup of tea and see if you're going through menopause, or whatever. It's not.
It's taboo. It is taboo.
We don't talk about that stuff openly. Well, I know in my circles we didn't, and I actually was even too embarrassed to talk to my mum, but I didn't realise that that was what was happening. That was also had a huge impact on the other stuff that was happening. And when Effie brought that up, I just remember I would be in maybe challenging situations, like giving a presentation to the CEOs of the group of organisations that we worked with, and I would be feeling like really uncomfortable. But what I would do when I felt like that, it would trigger hot flashes, and I would sweat profusely, which would make me even more uncomfortable, which would make me sweat even more. And then I would, so I didn't really understand that it was hormonal changes, and I didn't ever seek any support or any medical intervention for that. So because it wasn't something that was sort of factored in. In fact, I wasn't, in my mid-40s, I wasn't expecting to actually go through that. I was expecting to go through something like that maybe at this age, but not that age.
So, yeah, absolutely. And there are a number of other contributing factors. Menopause is certainly something that women need to deal with, and there are different ways of managing that. And Effie has, she's said in the comments that that's how she's feeling at the moment. So, yeah, absolutely. There are things that you can do to help yourself, and acknowledging that some of what's going on for you could perhaps be coming from the work arrangement that you're in, that is a misalignment for your essential self anyway. And that long-term stress is a contributing factor to how we set ourselves up to go through menopause. This is a whole discussion for another day, which I actually do have on my schedule to cover, because it's a really important part of the whole shift that the globe needs at the moment. Today was definitely a focus on burnout. Is there anything else, Adair, that you feel you need to add at this point in time about your experience and what other women can be on the lookout for?
I think if you are, it's mainly those trigger points. If you feel like you're getting irritable, or you're just having that extra glass of wine and you're making excuses and you don't feel like exercising. Although I did the opposite. I actually punished myself by exercising. So, and I'm sort of adding a tiny sort of weirdo way that I did, because even though I was doing it to punish myself, I think I had the benefits from it. But quite often you end up becoming a couch potato, or you're just very sluggish. But I was a bit obsessed with the gym, and and I'm just wondering where that obsession went. It could come back any time, thanks. but
you might be getting your endorphin hit somewhere else.
I think I might be. I'm totally obsessed with what I'm doing now, but I think it really is about, even if you are in that environment and you're finding that you feel like there's no way out, reach out to people. We didn't have this environment on Facebook like we did, back then, like we do now. It was but there are people out there and communities out there that can help and to make you feel safe. And big thing, don't judge yourself, because when you judge yourself, you're incredibly hard on yourself. So just take small steps towards falling in love with yourself or loving yourself, because when you do that, then you'll find that you start to love other stuff, and even those obnoxious people who want to make your life hard, well, you can just love them to death,
And that is such an important point that you bring up. This is one of those shifts that I talk about that's needed at the global level, which is recognizing worth of self within yourself, rather than measuring it against an external measure of productivity or output or dollar value or any of those external factors. The value of you lies within you, and it is powerful and unfathomable. So,
and I have to say that I still struggle with that sometimes. The conditioning has been extremely strong, because we are taught that the people that are edified are the ones that get all the the athletes, and the ones that get the trophies, and the ones that get so there is that external validation that we look for. But to be able to find it within yourself, whether you're doing your life's purpose or not, that's powerful stuff, because once you do find that, then you'll find it'll lead you to your life's purpose much more easily, and you don't have to fight it. So I'm still learning. And I think I'm going to be learning this till I die.
And that's possibly what we're all here to learn. Adair, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you again today, and thank you so much for your honest sharing and authentic, vulnerable self on display. Your experience, I think, will help many other women start to identify if they're starting to slide down that slippery slope. And Effie is saying it's so true, self-worth. Wow, thank you so much for reminding me of that. Yes, I think we all need a daily reminder of that one little sticky note. So thank you again, Adair, for being here and sharing your beautiful self, your incredible story, and the fact that burnout is not the end of the picture, it's a wake-up call. So the sooner we wake up to the symptoms, the sooner we can make a change, and we don't have to go all the way down to the bottom of the slope where, that's a painful crash, which I hit too. I have to admit, I hit that with a painful crash. But look at us now.
I know, right?
Yep. So thank you, and I will let you get upstairs and play with that beautiful family of yours that's upstairs waiting for you. And I will be back again next week. So I'll just pop you off and finish out my little session. So thank you, everybody, for joining me. Thank you, Effie and Leslie and Sharon, for the moment that she dropped in, and Heather Louise. I hope that you're feeling on the mend very soon and that they're treating you well in hospital. Thank you again, Adair, and for those who've contributed to the Friday Arvo chat today. I hope that you found this information useful, and if you know someone who would benefit from hearing this discussion, please do share this broadcast. This information is vital. we need to start looking after ourselves and each other in the workplace, in the home, wherever. We need to start connecting at a heart level. So I hope you can join me again next week. I'll be exploring some of the levels and layers of stress that contribute to the idea of burnout. And we'll look at what some of those factors are and how they affect our health and well-being. So thank you very much. And some of the long-term health effects, like I mentioned, menopause is something that is impacted by chronic stress in our early mothering years. So mums with young children, stop being so stressed. You don't want to go through menopause hell. That's it from me. I'm off my soapbox, and I look forward to connecting with you next week. Bye for now.